Hey, this is Gina Grad.
Hi, this is Teresa Strasser.
Hi, everyone. This is Mike Errico.
Hey there. This is Casey Cavalier.
I'm Rocky Rose.
And you are listening to The Jay Franzi Show.
Lucky you.
Welcome to The Jay Franzi Show. A behind-the-curtain look at the entertainment industry with insights you can't pay for and stories you've never heard. Now, here's your host, Jay Franzi.
Well, hello, and welcome to the show. I am Jay Franzi, and this is your backstage pass to the music industry. This week, we get to talk with the president and CEO of NAMM, the National Association of Music Merchants. We get to talk with John Mlynczak. We'll talk to him about his start in the music business, the role that leadership plays in not only business, but music, and we'll talk about NAMM and what it's all about. Now, John, he is not only a talented musician and the head of NAMM, but he's an amazing guy, and I can't wait to talk with him tonight. So if you would like to join in, comment, or fire off any questions, please head over to jfranzi.com. Now, let's get started. Can you tell us about your history in music before NAMM?
Yeah, my start in music, I'm like every band kid USA. Music was my favorite class in elementary school. I feel like I never was given a choice in life. They're like, what elective do you want to take in middle school? I was like, band. But what elective in high school? Band. That's why I can't type today. That's why I'm like a 2.5 finger typer, because I just could never take keyboarding class because I had band. What do you want to major in college? Music ed. It's like I just literally never thought about anything else. That was me always. If I didn't have a trumpet or another instrument in my hand, just playing guitar, whatever I can put my hands on, piano at home, just anything. It was music. And I just rushed nonstop to gigging and playing music. And I've been lucky to have some fun gigs and play with some great people and do a lot of music making. And then, I think that led up to, I don't know, it was 29, 30, something like that. You kind of get those pauses in life, that moment where you stop and you're like, oh, I'm somewhere. Let me think about this. Like you just kind of go so fast over a decade. You're like, I'm gigging, I'm teaching music, enjoying life. And I just kind of think about like, is this forever? What's next? Went back and did another master's in education and leadership and did some work on like music ed curriculum and things like that. And then, landed, I guess that's what they say. You have to land in the music industry because you have to, I guess, fall from somewhere else. Or you said like break in, like it's a
crime.
Exactly. Like it's a crime to be here. Right. So I landed, I won't say I broke in, but I landed in the music industry. Kind of all my passions came in together. I was lucky enough to get a job at PreSonus Audio. They were looking to break in the education world. Do we start an education division? What do we do? I had just come off a degree in education leadership. I was teaching music tech. I'd started the program in Louisiana, was doing some curriculum work around teaching with technology, and it just right time, right place. We both took a leap of faith on each other and said, okay, let's figure out the education market. And that was it. First thing they did is say, pack your bags. You're going to LA. You're going to the NAMM show. And I said, what's the NAMM show? Coming up on 12 years ago. Then it was just a wild ride through the industry. Ended up going to Hal Leonard, doing work there, and ended up here 18 months ago.
Awful lot there to unpack, sir.
Oh, yeah. Well, there's a lot in between. That was the highlights.
That's just the highlight reel. What was the best gig you've ever played?
It's funny. A lot of great gigs out there. The funniest one was I got picked up to play in a band. I was in Louisiana at the time, so it was a show coming through New Orleans, and I honestly cannot remember the guy's name, but it was like a kind of a circus type variety show vibe, and the trumpet player got sick, and they needed someone to come in and like read the show last minute, and I was like, "Yep, I'll drive down, I'll make it work." Cut out early. I'm like, "What do I need?" Normal questions like, "What time do we need to arrive? What do we need to wear?" And they're like, "Just can you get here about 4:30, and all you'll need is black socks."
All right, there's got to be more to that story.
Now, they had like uniforms and stuff they gave us, like costumes and stuff. But at the time,
So
I was in such a hurry. I'm like, great, I'm just going to bring a pair of black socks and a trumpet and wonder what's going to happen. It was super fun, played a bunch of stuff, great time. But that was a fun one.
just black socks. So you also mentioned teaching. So what kind of background do you have that led you to teaching?
I got a music ed degree right off the bat, and then I got, immediately got an assistantship for my master's to, teach some of the trumpet studio and that type of thing. So I feel like I've just been teaching my whole life. Even in like high school, I had enough credits to graduate with like the highest diploma and only need like 3 senior year credits. So I did like half the morning of school, like going to the middle school and helping the band director teach because I was like that much of a nerd because I just had something, needed the time and didn't need the credits. So I think I've always been an educator. And then I, started teaching like middle school, elementary school level. I was teaching trumpet lessons. It's pretty much as soon as I started majoring in college, I always had a studio of lessons. That was always my part-time job. Spent a couple years working music retail. It was fun, but you can make a lot more money teaching privately. And I've literally always been teaching. Even when I started at PreSonus, I started teaching graduate courses. I spent 10 years teaching graduate courses at various universities, just adjunct part-time. But I was always teaching for 10 years straight, even when I worked in the industry. In fact, the first time I stopped was when I took this job because I just can't maintain a adjunct anything here. But
so you enjoyed teaching then?
I do. I really enjoy watching people like thrive.
Similar to you, I found myself teaching at the engineering college in Nashville. Never in a million years thought I'd be a teacher, but I loved it. I mean, I absolutely loved it. I just enjoyed working with the students. It wasn't necessarily the class time where you're teaching a lecture and you're talking about a particular subject. It was just as much in the hallways before and after the classroom when they come up and ask you for your advice, and it's more of a mentorship. So I really enjoyed that. So did you have that same experience? Were you able to work as a mentor to these students?
You hit it. That's everything about teaching. You are, especially when you're a music teacher or an art teacher or even like PE, like one of those teachers that they have the same year for multiple years, you start to see those students' growth. That was the beautiful thing. I taught at a K-8 school, but I'd see kids like from generally about 3rd grade all the way through 8th grade, and you sort of watch them develop. You get to know them. You learn very quickly that, especially as a teacher where you're trying to teach them to be passionate and organized, express themselves, but in a controlled environment. But like, this sort of like right and left brain, like you're always stretching someone and pushing them to get something great that they didn't know they had in them. You realize very quickly that these kids come to you a lot of times before they come to their parents with stuff.
Yeah. No,
especially
absolutely.
in middle school. And that's where you start realizing you make a real difference in kids' lives. And now still friends with a lot of them. They grow up, they hit you up on Facebook. Who is that? Like, oh my gosh, have I really been that long since I taught you? You're married with how many kids? How old am I now? But
right.
It's great.
I taught the college level and I'm dealing with things like that. I'm like, oh my God, I feel old. So it happens. But you mentioned your personal educational background and getting a master's degree. So what was the actual degree in?
My first master's was in brass performance, and my second was in educational leadership, which is a degree that leads you to licensure for being a principal. Because I got that degree from a conversation with my wife to prove a point. I was like, something had happened, and I was really upset with the director of fine arts in our district. I'm like, why? Because it was like the PE coach who also did music. And you get that a lot. And I was like, this is not good. Like, we got to do something for our schools and our district. And like the reason we can't get a good art supervisor is because none of these great music teachers have the licensure, like have principal degrees, basically. And she's like, well, why don't you just get one? Next day, I looked at LSU had a cohort starting within a few weeks. And I literally just went in and said, all right, I'm going to get one, damn it. So I did a 2-year master's all for like an impassioned argument about like, we got to do something cool. And I just figured it would come in handy one day. And it really did. I mean, what I learned just thinking about adult leadership, change management, that type of stuff, it was super valuable.
Well, let's talk about that for a second, because when I think of education, and again, a similar path to you, I went ahead and I got my master's in business leadership. But my question to you is, do you feel, I know in your world you require a certain license to be a principal or in that type of thing, but do you feel the education was necessary to the work you were doing?
That's a fantastic question. And I'll answer in two ways, because at the time, but that landscape is changing. It's changing all over the country now with, college and career readiness versus career readiness, direct to career programs, that type of thing, career and technical education. Like, I think that landscape's changing a lot right now. In fact, I know it is. And we track it a lot on just careers in the music industry, which I'm sure we can get into. At the time, there are certain jobs where like the degree is a barrier. You want to be a lawyer, you have to get a certain degree.
Right.
You want to be a doctor, you get a certain degree. You want to be a teacher, you have to get a certain degree. You want to be certified to be an administrator, you have to get a certain degree. So depending on the field, yes, there are degree barrier entries, but that aside, if the field requiring it, I'm a firm believer that, like you, because you've done all certificates all over, education, you go and you're paying for access to professors, you're paying for access to curriculum, but it's what you make of it. Just going through the motions and getting a piece of paper does not mean anything. You have to make something of it. It's what you take out of the folks around you. It's what you make of the experience. That holds really true. And anything you learn, I truly believe that college particularly teaches you to learn how to learn. And every time you go and you learn something new, you're learning how you learn yourself. And it's just the beginning. Like, you graduate college today, you have an undergrad degree. I don't care what it's in. You've learned a little bit about how you as a person learn and what your passions are. And that degree or those classes, whatever they are, that gets you access to then going out in quote unquote the real world and continuing to hone your ability to learn, to study, and to find your passions. It's just a door. You got to walk through it, but it's how you walk through it and what you make of it that really makes the difference.
Exactly. And I don't think there's anything that I couldn't have learned on my own. I think it was more about the connections and the relationships I made while I was at the school that really mattered.
I think it makes sense for our industry too. I think a lot about careers in music is one of our biggest initiatives, workforce development right now. And, I think there's certain careers that are definitely a ladder, and, you have to hit certain points and, there's that. But the music industry, I think it's like a rock wall. You're left, you're right, you go up, you go down, you hang out. Sometimes you just fall back and go to the bottom and start again. Hopefully someone's holding on to you below and supporting you. But that's sort of where we are, and you don't get stuck in one area. You're free to move around and find your path, and you can climb as high as you want, just depending on how hard you want to work at it and be willing to fail and go back and start at the bottom and rise up again. I mean, I really think that's what the music industry is, and there's value there.
So how do you balance that background in music and now turning it into a business career? Do you still keep it creative?
Oh, absolutely. I think it's constant creative. It's funny. I sometimes, because I played jazz and classical, and I'll always mention like, oh, this is a jazz gig. We're gonna prepare like crazy. We're gonna practice the licks. We're gonna listen to the changes, but we're gonna walk in this meeting and we're gonna improvise. Doesn't mean you're not prepared. Improvisation is not like lack of preparation. It's actually a lot of preparation.
Right.
But you're going to live in the moment with that preparation. You're going to know your licks and all the keys. You're going to know the changes. You're going to hear. You're done the background. Sometimes with classical gigs, you're going to go in and try to nail your part as best as possible. So I think about it a lot. So I have two distinct backgrounds. Being a musician and being an educator. I think about this all the time. What makes me a successful leader for our industry and for an organization, a large organization? You learn very quickly in music. You show up on time, know your part, and don't be a jerk. I mean, that's number one. You want to thrive as a musician, you have to be there. You have to be prepared. And every meeting, I feel that way. That's key. As a musician, you're only as good as your last performance. You don't get to success and then just stay there because you have a title. Titles don't matter. First chair, principal, third chair, fourth chair, sub, whatever. The title never mattered. What came out of your horn every day mattered. And if you didn't like what came out of your horn, you went back the next morning, you picked yourself up, you got in the practice room, and you fixed it. And I think that's just a lot of what as musicians, I think we can be really good business leaders because we recognize that, success every single day, you got to be working for it, and you have to be listening to, it's not what you think you sound like, it's what the audience is gaining. It's about those outcomes. And I take the same thing from being a teacher, especially a music teacher, right? The thing about the music teacher is, first of all the students, they're the ones facing the audience. Their sound's hitting the audience. You know what the audience is looking at for you as the teacher? Your rear end. So when you realize that your job is not to pontificate and tell those students how much you know, but it's to make them the most successful they can possibly be. And when you're good at it, you cannot be in the way and they can be great. That's what leading a company is like. It's not the John show. I mean, I do all these talks and I talk about the industry and I realize I'm a face and I get that's part of the gig. But at the end of the day, I got 62 people here that have to perform without me standing in front of them. And I think about that all the time.
So I think that's a good point too. It's leadership, whether it be for a band or whether it be a company, it's the same thing. Your role as a leader should always be to make your team look good, not to make yourself look good. The way you end up looking good is because your team was successful without you standing in the way. But you mentioned in there the boardroom and talking about it like it was a jazz performance, and I can see that because you prepare for something like that. In some cases, you may even over-prepare, but going in there and then disregarding everything you've researched up to that point and being able to play off of the other people in that room is definitely a way of treating it like a jazz performance. Can you give us an example of something else that you may have done creatively that has worked and tied over into the business world?
Yeah, here's an example that comes to mind. I learned at one point as a player that trying to get to a place where you could play like an etude or a performance or a recital, breaking down the individual skills was a really important tactic. That was a breakthrough. I forget what teacher, because I was always seeking out like every teacher I could get to, like, listen to me play. And at one point, a teacher was like, look, take this etude and just do the rhythm. Forget the notes and melody. Just work on like all the tongue of it. Now, just think about the melody. Now, just like think about the emotional architecture is very ethereal type thing, but break down all the elements, like break it down. You get these plateaus as a player. You always get plateaus. And you get to a place, it's not getting better. I'm trying harder. I'm doing the same things harder. It's going to get better. But so at some point, break it all down, separate the elements and try to figure out what element's holding me back. And I take that in business a lot. We have multiple departments. They have to connect. If something's not gelling, I think about like, look, we got to just break it down. Like marketing, what is your focus here? Okay, like technology, what are you working on here? Like what are the two different elements? Because somewhere something's not jiving, but unless you break down all the different pieces, it just doesn't flow. And then as far as like jazz gigs, sometimes you got to call a different tune. And that's where like it really, like talk about like freaking your band out. Sometimes it freaks your team out. But if the audience isn't responding, and look, I need an up-tempo tune. I know the set list says this, but I got to call an audible. We didn't even rehearse it, but you know the tune. It's an A flat. Give me 4 in. Let's go. Like those moments, you have to know when to do those. And sometimes you got to do them to just jolt your team and get them like, oh, okay, we're doing this. It creates an energy in the room that the audience picks up on. Think of our team as the band. And, the audience is obviously like our NAMM members in our industry. Your audience can feel when the band's on autopilot. The audience can feel when you're just like going through the motions. So sometimes as a band leader, you just got to call something and freak everyone out. But it usually creates a fun energy that everyone feels.
Right. Well, that's when things come together and work out. But to get to that point, you mentioned your different departments or the different silos that you might have. How do you get those silos to communicate with each other?
Yeah, we have a couple things we do here. One is I'm just incredibly lucky to be surrounded by so many amazing people who just love this industry. Like you work at NAMM because you deeply, deeply love the industry. And that's the good thing. So I'm very blessed to be surrounded by people that are just like driven and just want to like give everything. And that's the type of thing that like you can't teach or force, but it's here. And that's just in these walls. And it's just phenomenal. I'm a big shared vision person. I'm a big believer in shared vision. we do our strategic plans. In fact, our fiscal year starts October 1. So tomorrow starts our new strategic plans. It's probably top of mind. But we set strategic goals for the entire organization. And every department lead and every staff, I share everything. I mean, we're a nonprofit. Anything I'll share with the members or anything that's like goes to the board, I share with our staff. Anything that's going to be public eventually, the staff needs to know. So I'm like huge shared vision. Everyone will do it tomorrow. We have a big meeting Thursday, actually. But everyone in this building will be able to recite all of our objectives. We use OKR model, objective key results, or key results, KPIs, same thing. But we have, 2 objectives per focus. Everyone will be able to recite them at all times. They're NAMM objectives. And then each department basically comes up with how their initiatives support NAMM's objectives. And then our employees do a SMART goal model, but everyone's focused on the 2 objectives per area of NAMM. And just we're aligned. And, it's not about I or me. It's about NAMM's objectives. So we don't have like siloed objectives at all. We only have NAMM.
Well, that comes back to leadership again. It takes a true leader to make that happen, to break down silos and create a team that does everything as one. But we've mentioned it several times. We mentioned NAMM, and that's the reason you're here. So can you tell us what NAMM stands for?
NAMM is the National Association of Music Merchants.
And what is their overall purpose, sir?
Right. So NAMM is a nonprofit trade association. Our mission is to strengthen the music products industry and promote the pleasures and benefits of making music. So we are essentially a global trade association. Our members are anyone who makes, manufactures, sells, distributes, and in a lot of individual categories uses musical products. Any company you could think of as a NAMM member, we, as an association, we think about 3 divisions: NAMM Show, Member Services, and the NAMM Foundation. And I mentioned like 2 objectives per division. That's what I was talking about. So on the Member Services side, we are first and foremost a C6 trade association. We are the voice of the industry on national and global policy issues that affect our industry, whether it's global trade in Europe, South America, advocacy, music ed policy, and trade compliance in the US, et cetera. We handle all of that. We are that voice. We focus on workforce development, music education advocacy, business compliance. We do education for our members. We do industry insights, reports, data collection. We commission reports for our industry to help our companies be more successful. So we think about all day, how do we make anyone who makes, manufactures, sells, distributes a musical product more successful with their business? The NAMM Show, of course, is the world's largest music products trade show in January in Anaheim. We bring the industry together globally every year. And every NAMM show takes about 18 months from beginning to conception. So we're already in the 26th NAMM show, even though January 25 is around the corner. Right. We focus a lot on what that looks like. And NAMM shows are like wine vintages. I'm in California now, so I talk about wine all the time. There is no NAMM show. There's the 24 NAMM show, then the 25 NAMM show, then the 26 NAMM show. Every year we make a NAMM show based on what the industry needs and what the industry needs from their leader. It's every year. It just depends on what the industry needs and how we evolve. And we're trying lots of things and we're evolving to the new normal of what, not only the music industry needs, but what consumer behaviors are, all of that. And then on the NAMM Foundation side, we also operate a C3 charitable foundation. Again, everything we generate from NAMM goes into our foundation, and we focus on creating more music makers worldwide. And so you think of it as NAMM Foundation, our job is to grow the market for everyone, to create more music makers. Our member services side of NAMM, our job is to do everything we can to make the companies out there serving those music makers, make them more successful. The NAMM show is where we gather the entire industry globally to put a spotlight and elevate everyone's business in one global connection that happens every year. That's NAMM.
So how does your time at PreSonus and the other organizations help you now that you're here at NAMM?
I have seen or done a lot of the various jobs in our industry. So I can relate to what our member companies are thinking about, what they're going through when they invest in a NAMM show booth, or if you're a retailer or buyer, what they invest in and attending the NAMM show and what they want out of it. That helps a lot. We are board governed, so I always look to surround myself by the best and brightest board members so we can go out and get their input as well. I think constantly listening to our industry, like being on stage and constantly looking at the audience and seeing if they're into it, is where we have to really think.
So you mentioned this being the National Association of Music Merchants. So if a merchant is coming and they're, like you said, it's like a trade show, it's a convention, they set up a booth, what is it that they hope to get out of having that booth?
You asked the good questions. There's a couple things they want. First of all, it's the opportunity to connect with their entire distribution network, whether it's their distributors, their international distributors, their U.S. distributor, all of their buyers, getting everyone in one place. It's about creating that brand experience. So today, someone sets up a booth, they are setting the stage for how their products and brand should be represented, how they see their brand. And they can hold meetings with, again, their retailers, their distributors, their buyers. That's the core of a trade show. In addition, NAMM is a platform to elevate your brand. So, we think a lot about what do we need as a trade show. We need every component that elevates that product to the consumer. We're not a consumer show, meaning you don't just walk into the NAMM show and shop for instruments and buy it. That's
Right.
you're not allowed to do that. You have to be in the trade somehow to get in. But what we do want to do is elevate that brand to the highest level. So we think about influencers, content creators, podcast, YouTube channel, TikTok, Instagram, that world, which is telling the story of products, where most consumers go to first, by the way. You want to buy a product A, you might go to YouTube and watch a shootout between two different brands' version of product A, figure out which one you like, find an influencer, follow some artist, figure out what they're using. Usually the where to purchase decision in the purchase journey today, according to research in multiple industries, is usually third down the line. And that's the reality. So what we have to do is make sure that we're getting the people that are influencing this purchase decision, educators being a key audience. Educators are at the forefront of the next generation. So the NAMM show is not only a gathering of the core trade, retail, distributor, manufacturer, but that booth is about getting the influencers, the content creators, the high value artist influencers, the educators, and anyone else who's going to elevate that brand to the next level.
Well, I've been to the show and I've seen some of these booths, and I mean, they are very, very elaborate. But they have rock stars in these booths demonstrating the equipment that they represent. You have speakers like the Lord Alge Brothers and even Bob Clearmountain that are talking about the industry and the gear that they use. So how do you feel about these relationships that these brands are developing with these celebrities?
Yeah, it's all about artist influencer. While we're not a consumer show, we think a lot about, and our brands expect, who influences that consumer purchase. That's the key. And that influencer could be retail shop, studio teacher, artist. But the power of those artists, the musical products, they look pretty sitting on a wall or on a shelf, but they do a lot better when you hear them sing. And so getting the amazing artists there, getting the amount we put into production of the stages and all that area, that's the value, is getting those products to sing and really create that brand experience. We are talking to companies all the time now about brand experience and what they want from the NAMM show and who they want to see and how we can deliver that. And that's, again, like the 2025 NAMM show vintage is different than the 24 because it's about what the industry needs this year. And that's where we're asking our brands what they expect and pushing the boundaries on what's going to be live streamed from the show. Because the show happens in person, but it also, like you said, people are watching live. There's hundreds, if not thousands, of live streams happen at any minute from somewhere in the show. We push the boundaries on internet usage. That's a whole other thing. I just, we have to. We need to tell the story of those products. And that's the exciting piece. And like the big booths and the elaborate setups, it's about telling that brand experience. And again, our industry, we realize that there's so many connections. I'm actually trying to update our data and capture them because I think we have the technology, not we at NAMM yet, but I think the world has the technology to do this now with AI and data. But anyone who's been to a NAMM show knows that you go there with a plan and you leave with more opportunities than you ever could have imagined were possible before you walked in the door. Everyone who leaves the NAMM show is like, "Oh, it was amazing. Why? I met so-and-so who just met so-and-so and I got this," because everyone's there. And that everyone, the depth of PreSonus is what we're measuring now. If you go to register for the NAMM show, we ask you these questions like, "Oh my God, just give me my badge, NAMM, click, click, click." But what we want to understand is why it's so successful. Because if we know where the success areas are, like I want to pour gasoline on those fires. And we're now capturing, realize that you might be a product manager for one company or a salesperson for one company, but you might be a pretty good guitarist who serves on the weekend, who also has connections to this engineer who happens to go on tour with so-and-so. And it's those type of connections that we know our industry has, is everyone in that chain actually has a real vested interest in elevating any win brand. So I think one thing our industry realizes is that the 75,000 people plus that'll be at the January show, every one of those people is a potential brand influencer because of their connection to our industry.
Do you feel that the organization itself plays a part in the networking and introducing people to each other?
I do. And I think that's a huge area of growth for us. We want to move from like bumping elbows at the bar, which is the traditional like way of networking and growing. We can use data and we can structure our programming to facilitate those connections. So I'll give you a couple examples. I mean, we now can take the data from who's registering because we ask some deeper questions. We can now recognize personas of people and put together a program knowing that certain groups attend on certain days, making sure that the education sessions for certain communities don't interfere with networking opportunities in certain communities. We can program the show, and we do that. We think about communities. So like professional audio is a community, recording engineers is a community, school band and orchestra, percussion, fretted. We think about all these communities of products. And we look at community by community and say, let's not do the networking reception for pro audio at the same time all of like the Dante training's happening. Let's think about these kind of programmatic areas and flow these folks through. So the NAMM show is not about 75,000 people. We truly think it's about 75, 1,000 person communities. And the more we can drill in on that, we're doing a complete data or technology overhaul now so we can get down to like the absolute granular detail of every community, what they do, but how we keep that going year round. So that means like dynamically segmented emails year round that engage each community with education content, our new NAMM Next event in Nashville, professional development. That's the future that we're setting forth over the next several years.
So what are some of the challenges you find when you're putting this show together, especially at this size?
The challenge right now is industry consolidation. And you look at just cycles, we're seeing a lot of consolidation, a lot of companies that own multiple brands, like Fender and PreSonus. PreSonus is going to have a booth on the exhibit floor in the recording audio section. Fender's going to have their third floor guitar area because they have to be in two different places because they're, have two different ownerships. And you could go on and on and on. There's so many companies. So the thing with consolidation right now is we have, companies that are in multiple categories that fit in multiple communities. And so what's challenging us now is, we have some companies that are trying different things. Some want 4 or 5 smaller booths to have the product segment in the area, whereas other companies, and I'm not going to name any names out of respect for their strategies, because we talk deeply with companies about their strategy. We want to consider ourselves as like white glove concierge, like advisors. But we have other companies taking bets on, I want to have the big presence and have someone walk in and feel my whole brand experience, even if it means that a certain segment's going to have to walk 2 halls over because I can't be everywhere. And we're constantly like talking to them. How did it work for you? What did you see? But that consolidation is making it tricky for brands to be everywhere because long gone are the days where I'm like one company that makes one product. We have companies making lots of products. And so that's getting a little tricky, but we try to make sure that the education aspects are always driving people specifically to where they need to be on the floor. Again, technology saves everything. The map on the app, walking you, connecting you, letting you know where to go, that helps.
Well, I'm glad you mentioned technology. Can you tell us if or how much AI you're using at NAMM?
We're dabbling, but we're going to start using a lot more. We are transitioning to new infrastructure that lets us take advantage of that. AI is only good as the data that goes in. And, like a lot of organizations over time, especially during COVID, we're probably using 7 pieces of technology when we can use 3 or 1 like source of truth. So getting our data to a place that we can use AI is a top priority. But I think for what AI does, my opinion, but also, you think about what ChatGPT, it works off predictions.
Right.
It studies the internet and says, okay, after this word, the highest probability the next word is going to be this and that. I mean, so what AI does from a business standpoint, I'm not talking about music at all. As a business tool, AI lets you learn and create predictions and gather insights from what was before considered unstructured and unquantifiable data. And from a trade show perspective, when we capture the persona, primary, secondary, tertiary personas of people, yes, your number 1 badge says you're a buyer for so-and-so, but second, you're an artist that gigs here. Third, you're involved in your house of worship community. Fourth, you're a bedroom producer. And so, then we can measure where those people go and interact and harness that data. AI will then give us insights that we didn't know. Back to why is NAMM such an amazing show? Because we hear it, post-show survey, how was NAMM? It was great, I love it. I've traveled, NAMM's amazing. And I'm like, but why? Tell me why. That's what I think AI can do. It can take all that unstructured data and all those interactions and help us understand where the magic is. What do we want to do with that? We want to make the next vintage even stronger. So we don't want to break what's working. We want to enhance what's working. We want to continue to refine what can be better. And we want to take that experience to be year round. So that's the biggest push now is with this new infrastructure, how can we keep that vibe going year round? How can, people go to NAMM.org all year and get value? Why does a company log into NAMM.org and I need to check out NAMM.org and see what they have for me today? That's the ultimate vision.
What kind of vision do you see at the moment, or how do you think AI is going to come into play when we're talking about being able to generate music?
Yeah, that's a completely different part of AI, right? Because a lot of our lane is business intelligence, and again, the education sessions of the NAMM show, how we program the schedule based on what people want and who they are and who's going, that really helps a lot. So, thoughts on AI for generating music, AI for generating images, AI, for generating marketing copy, content. I mean, AI is doing a lot of stuff right now. On one hand, it lowers the barrier to entry for creative. Tinkering is not the best word, but it's what I can come up with right now. Creative exploration. So if I wanted to say, I wonder what, I want to try this beat, but I kind of want to get this kind of style. Can I get like a bossa nova with something like this, but then impose this melody? Well, you might have to go make that for a long time. Now you can just I kind of call it a rough mix. You can idea test and air it. There are a lot of music making apps. I mean, it's not new that there's apps that make music quicker. I believe that lowering the barrier to entry to get more people involved in that that fever of creating music and loving being part of being a music maker, the more music makers we can make, the better. I think where I'm really focused on now, am interested in personally is the educator in me, lowering the bar to entry, allowing more people to create quicker and easier, taking the time away. It gets more people involved. You think about a pyramid, the base is getting wider, but go up 2 steps on the pyramid. Are we retaining them? That's where I think we should have the conversation. Not about how easy it is to make rough AI stuff, because once anyone can do it, then anyone can do it. It makes the cream has to rise higher to the top. And so then the question is, how do we retain people? Where do they start realizing, hey, this is pretty fun. Let me learn about recording techniques. Let me learn about how to make beats. Let me learn about producing. Let me learn about mastering. Let me learn, let me pick up an instrument. Let me, that's where we're going to elevate. So if the base of the pyramid gets wider, that's great, but it has to widen the whole pyramid. And it's that second rung that I don't think we're talking enough about right now.
But with that said, have you heard any of the products created from AI?
You know, it's interesting. I probably have, but the question is do we know we're listening to products created AI or components created from AI? You know, I think what you're talking specifically about now is probably like asking AI to like create an entire stem or even a whole track.
Right, yeah.
Because we've been using AI and like modeling for like, they've been called plugins for a long time. So like, you know, like, hey, take the vocals out of this track. Like, okay, that's always been AI. The question is now make a track that sounds like so-and-so with a reggae beat. That's where that's where we're in the world we're in now.
No, I agree 100%. You mentioned being 18 months in advance to have to plan out these shows. So what can we expect January and coming up next January?
2026 is going to be NAMM's 125th anniversary.
Wow.
It's going to be a show for the books. And not only will we see, again, more innovative use of space and more innovative brand experiences created, it's probably one of those years, and by probably definitely, that we pull out all the stops, the A-list talent. In fact, the announcement we're going to make on the NAMM Show 25 as far as like headliners and artists is going to be pretty incredible. And just know we've already contracted to top it in 26. And, you know, for us, the 2026 show, since it's that 125th year anniversary, is about the history of our industry. It's about storytelling. And not only NAMM, we've already started on just how ways we're going to pull out, you know, historic, you know, archives and talk about the history of our industry, but also encourage our member companies to tell their story. So the timeline, the history, it's going to be a real exciting moment.
All right. So who can we expect to see this year?
There's going to be some pretty amazing stuff happening. I cannot announce it yet, but we're going to have some incredible artist lineups. Again, a lot of our companies are pulling on all the stops, especially the ones that have anniversary years. Pretty cool. Yeah, there's a lot of great things happening.
We do this thing here we call Unsung Heroes, where we take a moment to shine the light on somebody who works behind the scenes or somebody that may have supported you along the way. Do you have anybody you'd like to shine a little light on?
Unsung heroes. I believe are always built by mentors and mistakes, and the good mentors to help you through the bad mistakes. There's two, and they both have the same role in my life. In my high school band director, Jim Pennington, my college brand director, Terry Alston, both of those men, like at a formative time for me, like they're like, that's what I want to be. I want to be organized, passionate. I want to do music every day, and I want to be endless pursuit of perfection. And both are actually good friends of mine today and still in my life. But I think that's where, you know, you back to that teacher always being part of your life. And I mentioned earlier, I have those students. Like I am still that student for those men.
A big thanks to John for taking the time to share his stories with us. And thank you for taking the time to hang with me here. As always, I really do appreciate it. If you know anyone that would enjoy this episode, please be sure to share it. You can do that and find the links to everything mentioned over at jfranzi.com/episode 94. Thanks again for listening, and I'll see you next week.
Thanks for listening to The Jay Franzi Show. Make sure you visit us at jfranzi.com. Follow, connect, and say hello. This episode has been brought to you by VR Knives, your source for 100% custom knives made by a true rock star. So, if you're in the market for a new piece of art, reach out to VR Knives. 407-421-5528. 407-421-5528.